Alrighty, we are back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. This is Location Weekly. It's episode number 497. And it's a bit of a special one, as we do if you've been watching this show for years. This is our annual prediction show. So we're recording live on December the 29th, on that in-between time between Christmas and the start of the new year. And it gives us a chance to reflect on the year that was and potentially the year that's coming, and to, not that we have crystal balls or anything like that, but we like to kind of recap what we thought was going to happen this year. I think nobody expected a pandemic, but anyways, and kind of speculate a little bit on next year. So Abriana, how are you?
You know what? I'm hanging in there. We are wrapping up this year, and in true 2020 style, um I've been recording from my bedroom for quite a while now, and working here as well. But I've had a woodpecker that has taken up a house like right outside my bedroom. So, it just kind of like goes with the theme of the whole year. Just, if something else is going to just kind of like nag at you, it's there. So I do feel like I'm losing my mind a little bit, but maybe I just need to go like get a BB gun or something. Okay, don't hate me. I would not do that. I'm definitely kind to animals. Anyways, but yeah, I am, you know what? I'm good. And I'm thankful for this year and all that it has taught me, and the opportunities it's given me in new ways. And I'm looking forward to a better 2021. I'm hopeful. But we'll see, right?
We will see. I think it's been an incredibly hard year for so many, challenging, created lots of opportunities as well, I would say. And, and I think, at least for speaking for myself, I can say that, it really helped to focus on, what's important, and, who's around you and how you can impact, and how you can help. Um, yeah, I want to do more of that. So let's be hopeful for 2021. So
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that we've had a lot of opportunities, to reflect on things this year, spend more time with those that we say are most important, and a lot of times we don't get to spend a lot of time with because we're always on the go, and slow down a little bit in some ways. Um, and for me, I feel like I've actually learned that I am more of an introvert than maybe I thought I was, and that's okay. That I enjoy being home a lot of times. So I think it's going to be a little hard sometimes if things actually do get back to normal at some point, and getting out of sweatpants and out of out of the house, with all of the convenience that we've had. But there's been like I would say an increase in you know the love that we have around us. Obviously, we feel for those that have had a lot of loss this year. So there's been a lot of changes, whether that's just in relationships or actually losing those that we love. And I think it's just been a year of reflection. But I was also reflecting on our predictions for last year. And, I think we did pretty good for the most part. There were some that maybe did not pan out as we had thought, but there were some that did. So, do you want to start with one of yours and see maybe what
yeah,
happened there?
so sure, let's do that. So last year, I think I'll. Why don't we just roll them all together, kind of, and then we'll kind of flow back and forth. But yeah, I kind of called for, less IPOs this year and more M&A activity. Think we did pretty well on that overall. Definitely didn't see a lot of IPOs this year. I think the pandemic did a great job of helping me with that one, of slowing down the number of public offerings. Although obviously in the last couple of weeks, a bunch of companies, finally made that happen in the very last few weeks of the month here. But overall, we definitely didn't have a lot of IPOs. On the M&A side, tons of activity, especially in the location space. We've talked about a number of deals over the course of the year of just companies being acquired and snapped up and merged into other location players. And so I think we're going to see more of that going into the new year. I think there's just companies that just won't survive, that either due to coming changes in privacy rules, like what happened with GDPR when we went through that, and what we can expect here in North America. That coupled with, I think, just people going through financial hardship and difficulties coming out of the pandemic. I think an overall decline in ad spend around this type of location-based advertising overall, or at least a hold on ad spend this year, led to a lot of that, and so I think you'll see even more M&A activity, moving into next year. Yeah, and then the second thing that I talked about was the use of location data playing a big role in the U.S. federal election. While it wasn't so evident, like there wasn't a lot sort of publicly talked about in that realm. Certainly behind the scenes, if you were in the industry, if you're working in the industry, if you're a supplier of data in the industry, that how much location data played a very, very major role this year in the election. I had a half dozen phone calls from reporters from the New York Times to others around the world, asking about what we knew about who was using data, which party was doing what with it, and so on. And so it was very much happening. Some companies were profiting from it. Some companies were maybe going too far with it. In some cases, I won't reserve any judgment on that, but I will say that I think we did okay on that prediction in terms of the data playing a big role in the election. So that's
Yeah,
kind of my thoughts. Over to you.
yeah, I certainly think that location played a huge role in the elections, maybe just not in the way that we thought it would, right? Um, they say Atlanta influences everything, and I think that has definitely been the case this year. And Georgia still has an election coming up that's very important and influential in
Yeah.
what's going to happen. And there is not a day that goes by besides Christmas Day that there is not somebody ringing my doorbell, texting me, calling my phone, reminding me about the upcoming vote. I'm like, we got it under control. So I think that location did play a role, maybe just a little differently than we anticipated it. And some of the two things that I was looking back at one was thinking about more privacy regulations and the challenges that we've had, and maybe streamlining that and bringing it all under one federal law. We didn't see that happen this year, so you were right in the fact that because it is it has been an election year, that just legislation has not been passed, but we have seen we've seen that the Biden administration likely has this on their agenda, bringing this into, over the next few years. We've also seen a lot of growth, I think, in like global privacy legislation. So besides CCPA, we've seen obviously like GDPR, Japanese Act on the protection of personal information, the Brazilian General Data Protection Law. There's the Indian Personal Data Protection Bill, which is still in the works. They're working on getting that wrapped up. And we've seen something called CPRA, which is the California Privacy Rights Act, which is also slated to be brought forward next year. So I think that we're going to continue to see sort of that trend like moving in, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, we've also seen a lot of call outs, from tech companies making, calling out some of these SDK location data providers and resellers, really like laying down the law and cutting people off. And, that also, it feeds into the privacy regulations and challenges that we've seen. But I think it also feeds into like, what's the future going to look like for the location data industry. And sometimes they've made an example of some small guys as well, and those that we may think that are doing things right or not, or having some questionable circumstances as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of that, and we're also going to continue to see probably more on what's happening with the FTC and some of these big tech players like Facebook that's happening now. So there's going to be a lot happening in the courtroom, I think, this year. So that will be interesting. The other thing that I had mentioned, well, one that I would just say is like a quick one, is we talked about voice being on the rise. And I think we've continued to see voice, really adapt to consumer behavior as well as, advance. I don't think we've seen anything that's been, we've seen growth, right? I wouldn't say that there's been any groundbreaking advancements like I expected to see, but we do see, a stat that I read recently was about 27% of the global population are currently using voice for search on their mobile devices. So, we're continuing to see that rise, 8 to 10% year over year. And I think that we'll continue to see that. And then the last area that I had covered was really just ad tech in general, and some of the continued, expansions that we're going to have there. So, I think that we saw a huge year for CTV and OTT. I think a lot of that is thanks to the pandemic. Obviously, that was a huge helping hand forward for those, just because so many people are at home now and they're streaming so much more. We saw a 70% increase in ad spend for this area for advanced TV, and 72% of households in the US that are reachable now with this type of targeting and advertising, which is crazy growth. I think we also saw a huge push in identity graphs. There's players from all over the space that are touting their identity graph and how this can be used across the ad tech ecosystem. Part of that is also the future of a cookieless world as well, becoming reality, as well as Apple. They've postponed the effects of the iOS 14 update, but those are right around the corner now, and it's really going to rock the advertising world. So I think we saw a lot of those changes that we discussed. And we saw a fair amount of acquisitions, as you mentioned. So, we saw sort of the coupling up of Foursquare and Factual along with Placed, now all being one. Recently, we saw Experian acquire TapAd. That goes back to the whole identity graph basis and consumer information. So, I think we really predicted that one pretty spot on as well.
Awesome. Yeah. So not too bad, given that we've had a totally unpredictable year in so many ways. But yeah, I guess we were generic enough that we managed to make it through. Anyhow, as far as companies that we projected that would do well this year, I mentioned Amazon last year, specifically not Amazon kind of as we all know it, but a service of theirs called Fulfillment by Amazon. And I think that one did okay as well, because essentially what that is if you're a small business and you need to sort of handle your orders and fulfillment and shipping and all of that, you can turn that over to Amazon, and with all their behemoth infrastructure and processes and methodologies for doing that efficiently and on time and at the lowest possible cost and so on and so forth, you can basically kind of leverage Amazon's expertise and have them do that for you. And obviously the pandemic has never sort of been more clear than now on how important that is, especially when businesses are increasingly turning to delivery and order online and pick up and so on, because we can't physically go into the stores and the businesses. And so a service like Fulfillment by Amazon makes sense. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that one as well. How about you?
So I believe that I talked last year a little bit about advances in the cannabis industry and the technology around that. And although I do believe that we saw some growth there, pardon the pun, I also think that I think there's a slow, this is moving more slowly than maybe technology would allow. And the reason for that, I believe, is just because, like you said, it's an election year. There's still a lot of constraints in terms of advertising, in terms of, where things are legal, medicinal, recreational, and that's not been streamlined here in the US. And so I think that there's been progress that has been made around the technology side of it, whether it's for supply or the actual growth, or processing and fulfillment and delivery. There's been some advancements there, but not as I would have expected to see. I think now that, new administration is coming in, and it'll be interesting to see what happens and how things change, if it's more stringent or if it's more relaxed, and how sort of the technology and the advertising piece of that come together, because I know there's a lot of hurdles even on the CBD side, even for medicinal purposes. There's just a lot of challenges in that space right now, in terms of how businesses can actually reach consumers. So I'm not sure that that one really panned out as much as I had thought it would. What do you think?
Um, and I think it was definitely slower than we all expected. I think the pandemic definitely played a role in that. But I think that, we will see that pick up. I think we're starting to see a bit of a resurgence in the industry, especially in the last quarter. From an investment point of view, we're seeing more money flow back into it. I think there's hope coming out of the new administration that, legalization in the U.S., could be on the horizon. Other markets across the world are starting to move very quickly now. I heard yesterday that the Irish government is moving to legalize, and others. So I think there's, maybe, your prediction is just like, a little bit delayed. It's a year off or so. It's coming. So, yeah, there you go.
Consumption likely skyrocketed this year, though.
Yes, there you go. Especially here, it was deemed an essential service, all throughout the pandemic. So, all right. So let's look at next year and kind of what's coming. I'll let you start, and then we'll go.
All right. So I am predicting nothing groundbreaking here, but I think we're going to see a huge shift in advertising dollars moving from traditional and linear TV into advanced TV, meaning OTT, CTV. So, into those AVOD and SVOD services. I think we're going to see, these more traditional linear networks launching their own streaming services. We've seen a little bit of that this year. And, there's going to be a continued shift for these multi-channel video programming distributors, or MVPDs, as we call them. Their future is going to be drastically shifted in this next year. I think what changes they make, determines if they are, what business are they in, right? Are they going to have like a Kodak moment, or are they going to, remain relevant and figure out new ways to reinvent themselves and reach consumers? I think we're going to see a lot on the technology side here, including measurement features and functionality really be built out. There's, been there's a lot of moving parts here, where you think about how do you measure linear versus how do you measure, OTT and connected TV and different streaming services and across different apps and different smart televisions, right? So I think we're going to continue to see that sort of consolidate, and maybe some players really stand up as the measurement provider for, not just digital advertising, but more of like streaming advertising or all digital advertising as a whole. Obviously, I think we're going to continue to see these targeting capabilities evolve alongside of cross-device and retargeting opportunities. So, there's a lot that happens now, and all of those shifts that we talked about that had happened this year we're going to see how are those going to affect, right? So for example, like frequency capping, how many times somebody sees an ad, being able to retarget somebody within the same household on multiple devices. What does that look like in this cookieless world or without, the IDFA coming in from Apple? How are those changes going to impact this? And I think that we're really going to see a showcase in who's going to lead in this space based upon two main levers, if you will, right? I think it's going to depend greatly on content, who's got great content, as well as who has a direct relationship with consumers. So you can think about this as, who's got the hardware that's inside of consumers' homes that, trust them with it, whether that's a mobile device or a television that's a smart TV that's connected, or an actual like OTT, type of a Roku system. And then, who really can take that content and deliver it. So I think those two factors are going to really differentiate who's going to stand up in this space and make a big impact, and who's going to just be sort of like a mediocre player here. So that's my first prediction.
Yeah, I think it's a solid one, and you've covered it all. I mean, the only thing I'll add to it is I think that, like we used to talk about a lot in the early web days and so on, where content is king. I think content is king again. And I think that the onus is on these companies now to not just develop the distribution channels, the streaming channels to get this content out, but they have to go and invest in creating great content. And we've seen moves already. I mean, Apple is investing heavily in their own branded content, their own created content, taking a page right out of the Netflix world, and Amazon obviously is doing the same with Prime Video and so on. So we're seeing a ton of this, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to high quality, high production value content. The celebrities are all moving into that space, and it's big budgets, right? I mean, it's replacing what was in the box office at the movie theater, and bringing it in house now. Early reports, just to reference here, the Wonder Woman debut that happened, just a couple days ago, from what I've heard, hasn't done very well, and yet Warner Brothers has already said, there's a sequel coming. So, like there's that commitment to the channel. So I guess what I'm saying is that if you're going to do it, you really need to sort of say we're all in, right? You can't sort of dabble in it and expect to do well. You're going to have to go all in, and so I think that's a good solid prediction. On my side, shifting over now, the first one for me is, we've heard a lot over the last year, 2 years of sort of the promise of 5G, but I want to turn our attention because I do think the promise of 5G is great, and I think we're going to start to see the benefits of that in this year coming and beyond. But I want to turn our attention to inside the home, inside the office, inside the building, from a technology perspective, and look at Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in particular, because those technologies are also going through a bit of a technology revolution and upgrade as well. These things don't stay stagnant. And so, you have Wi-Fi 6 coming, and the next generation of Bluetooth, and these technologies, what they mean are, much greater speeds in terms of what we can do. And when we're all working from home, we've all experienced, at least in my house, I can tell you, the competition for Wi-Fi and for bandwidth, and it going down because there's just too much, everybody drawing on it at the same time, and all of that. And so what you have here in the next generation of Wi-Fi is 6 gigahertz bands. You've got the ability to deliver much more content, much less interference on the channel, just higher throughput in terms of what you can deliver across that. And that in itself, I think, is a huge innovation in terms of what's coming. in order to be deliver the streaming content that you're talking about, and in an ad supported fashion. But just in general, in terms of connectivity and what you can do with that from a device point of view, whether you're at home or you're, in a retail environment or a commercial office environment or what have you, I think there's a lot there. And on the Bluetooth side, innovation has been happening as well. So they've got their latest standard Bluetooth 5.2 coming. And one of the biggest pieces of that is innovations in the audio component. So basically bringing what they call a true stereo to earbuds and to listening devices, and the ability to broadcast from a Bluetooth device to multiple devices at once. So instead of it just being my phone is connected to that speaker, now it can be multiple devices, connecting to a Bluetooth device at the same time. That's a huge innovation. And I think one of the things that brings in a commercial context, like in our own home environments, that's one thing. But in a commercial context, having multiple devices connecting to a single device, I think in terms of just from a sort of 360 network visibility point of view, from a network operations point of view, there's a lot of things that you can do with that, especially when virtually every device that we have, has Bluetooth or has Wi-Fi, sort of built into it, right? From the smoke detectors to the thermostats to the lighting systems to the whatever. And so when you're looking at smart buildings and innovation, going forward, and because we will be coming back to buildings in some form or capacity, but having these things all be connected and controlled, through our mobile devices and others, I think really speaks to where we can go with this. And so I'm expecting a ton of innovation from new companies emerging that can basically leverage these technologies and create new communication channels, new content channels, and new devices that can leverage the capabilities around this. So that's kind of one of the areas where I'm really excited.
Yeah, I feel like, how a lot of times we'll hear maybe our parents or, older family members talk about how when they had watched television, they would have to get up to change the channel.
Yeah.
And now I feel like, the future for our children is going to be, well, back when we had internet, we had to make sure, we would have to turn off certain devices, to get offline so that we could stream faster because there just wasn't enough bandwidth is going to be like that equivalent. That's what we'll be telling our kids when we get older. But it's interesting to see how that's going to advance and just make our lives easier. And it will just continue to evolve there. And on the Bluetooth side, I agree. I think it's interesting. We've seen some advancements even this year with some interesting Bluetooth capabilities when it comes to even just tracing, for example,
Yep.
and anonymous tracing. So I think we're seeing some new advancements there. And I just got a really cool Christmas gift that was it's a Marshall speaker, and it's a Bluetooth speaker, or it can be hardwired for my record player, but you can connect with it. And the great thing is that it can connect to multiple devices at the same time. So there's no need to like disconnect and reconnect. And so it is, again, like that's more what's happening, and it just makes things a lot easier instead of having to figure out who's connected and disconnect. And so I agree that we're definitely going to continue to see more advancements around that.
Yeah, and just while we're on the topic of speakers, so last year one of the things I talked about was Sonos and what they were doing with some of their speaker technology. And one of the key things that I had mentioned at the time was a lot of these hardware manufacturers like Sonos and that are making these speakers and stuff, they're putting the smarts, they're putting the sort of the intelligence in the device, in the hardware itself, so that it can still function, it can still operate, it can still provide, whatever you need from it without it being connected necessarily to the internet all the time. So I think that serves two purposes. It gives you, sort of capability, but at the same time, there's also that it allays some of the sort of privacy issues or concerns people have that the device is listening to me all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's not connected, but it can still do what you want it to do, and then it connects to pull stuff down or what have you. So I think we're going to see a lot a lot more movement in that area in 21.
Yep.
All right.
All right. So my next prediction is really, I think we're going to see a huge rise in D2C or direct to consumer brands and offerings and mobile operations around those, um, more for convenience and safety. But I think that COVID and this year has really just opened so many people's eyes to how do we interact as a retailer, as a brand with our consumers, and how do we best serve them? So, what does that look like from a convenience factor? What does that look like from a safety factor? And what does that look like, from just a operational and staying in business standpoint, right? So, I think that this has created a new mindset. It's definitely created new consumer behavior, and we've all been adapting to that. And I believe that there's a ton of creativity we're going to see that's going to just be an offshoot of this into next year, where we're going to see a lot of new ways to have these, curbside offerings, delivering goods and services to people, and new ways to help small businesses even, right? So we've seen a huge struggle for small businesses, especially those that have any type of a retail storefront, even obviously like smaller mom and pop restaurants that are not part of chains. We've just seen a huge decline here. And I think that now that we see the challenges, there's a lot of people who are working on delivering new ways to connect consumers who want to shop local, who want to, help out the smaller businesses, and not just that upper 1% that has really profited this year, right? So I expect to see a lot of growth and new concepts to come out of that challenge that has happened this year. And I'm thinking of like, how can Etsy? Etsy is in essence like this huge superstore of all these small businesses. And is there a way that we can kind of take that Etsy and combine it with the convenience factor and the ease that an Amazon Prime 2-day delivery has, right? So I think that bringing those things together is really what we're going to see a lot more of in 2021. And I'm hopeful for that as well. As a small business owner, and seeing the struggle that has happened this year with my husband's cryotherapy business, it's just like, well, how do you deliver, or how do you shift your business? And so I think there's going to be a lot of technology advancements that will help power that.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good example with the Etsy store, because I look at it as there's definitely an opportunity right now, driven out of the pandemic, for small business, for local business, to find new customers, right? And I think like here where I live on the east side of Toronto in what's called Durham Region, there's a group that's been set up on Facebook called Durham Region Eats, and it's like this, sort of discover all these restaurants, all these little food places that you didn't know anything about in the region, and there's literally like I think I don't know. I'm gonna guess here like 20,000 people who are part of this group now. And this group didn't exist last year. It only came during the pandemic. And people are on there posting, "Hey, I was at this place today, and I had this, and I tried that, and I had this great meal, and whatever." And it's just and I've used it, and I've found all kinds of places that I had no idea about, right? And some have such great stories. Like there was this one. Submarine shop that I found not too far, like a 10-minute drive, and apparently it's been there for like 47 years, and it looks like it. Like you walk in there, and it like they haven't updated anything for the 50 years they've been in business.
Yeah.
But their prices are amazing. Like they just give you a quality sandwich, and you're in and out of there, and it's cool. And I think like there's just this opportunity to create this direct to consumer type of relationship that you're talking about. And in a way, it's like going back in time. In the way, it's like small business owners used to know their customers personally, and there was this relationship. And I think we can create that, and with some digital tools and intervention, kind of sort of filling in a little bit or facilitating. But I think there's a big opportunity. So I'm right there with you on that one. And the last thing I'll say about that is that I think there's also an opportunity to extend that kind of thinking to come out of this pandemic in this mindset, that we've all been given this opportunity. We've all been given to think about how we apply these technologies and these solutions and this kind of thinking to some of the big social causes that our world and our planet are dealing with right now. So I think there's a lot to be done, and I think we can start to find opportunities to serve others as well coming out of this. So anyhow, all right, my final prediction is a continued rise and evolution in the connected car space. I think one of the things that we've all learned this year is that we don't have to go to work in an office. We don't have to go to a store. We can get the things that we want online or brought to us or through curbside pickup and delivery and all this kind of stuff. But it does mean that we still need our vehicles. We still want to move about and get out of the house and so on. And so I think there's this kind of opportunity going into 21 where that technology that's been in the car that continues to sort of be advancing in the vehicle will continue to do so, but start to layer in more and more of the commerce and the connected commerce type of services that we've seen. So we've talked a little bit. I think it was the Skoda guys that we just covered a few weeks ago over in the Czech Republic that were embedding LBS technology into their vehicles. I think we're going to see a raft of that going into 21 from all kinds of car companies, where you're driving about and here's an offer for some restaurant or business nearby, based on your location and your data. But not just here's the offer, the ability to pay for it directly from your vehicle with integrated, wallets and so on into the vehicle. And that stuff's been there for a while, but I think what we'll see next year is this real sort of opportunity to kind of really crystallize it and make it happen, at scale. Because what you just talked about, this sort of direct to consumer, I don't think it's only big brands that have to play in that. Right? I think it can be local business. I think there's an opportunity, there's a marketplace type of thing that can be created to kind of bring that together. And so that's one area I'm really excited about in looking into the new year, and just drawing from our own LBMA research report, which just came out, by the way, this week. If you haven't picked up your copy yet, it's free this year. Just go to the LBMA website and you can download it. But 21% of the people we surveyed, and this was a global survey that we do, are already, these are brands and marketers around the world, are already using location data in vehicles. So that's, literally, a fifth of the marketing ecosystem that we talk to are already on this. And I think that's going to just increase greatly going into the new year. And just to add one more stat to the mix there, payments.com did a survey on this area recently, and they said that 70% of commuters are very or extremely interested in new connected commerce experiences. 70%. This is a U.S. study only, by the way, of people that they surveyed. And this was over 9,000 people, consumers in the U.S. that they surveyed. 70% of them are interested in new connected car commerce experiences. So that's a big number. And I think you're going to start to see that, because people are like, hey, I don't need to get out of my car to go into that store. Just let me order from my car and bring it out to me. And I'm happy and I get what I want. So.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting. Sometimes it also makes me think of, okay, so for those who maybe don't have a new car or a higher end car that would have this type of experience embedded in it, is there a resurgence of something like a Garmin, right? Where you have your own tablet in your car where you have those types of experiences, or you can facilitate that even from your mobile device, right? So,
Yeah.
it's interesting to think about what does the future look like there, but I completely agree. And this is also almost a really kind of a convergence of my last prediction and this one, but how do you provide those convenience factors based upon where you're driving and where you're at and what you need? And if you have your grocery list or your to-do list that's like somehow synced with your car, and navigating that based on traffic patterns or whatever, there's so much that really could just be brought in. So I'm excited to see how that certainly progresses and changes
All
throughout
right.
21. Yeah.
So that's our predictions. Do you have any company that you think is going to really do well, or any particular area in the new year that you wanted to highlight as we
Yeah,
were?
so I think as far as an industry to watch, I expect to see tremendous growth in the industry of what I would consider either data clean rooms or sort of these data bunkers. The ability to match your first party data with advertisers and be able to reach, across the ecosystem is really important for brands to be able to do. But in order to do that, they want to make sure that they have brand safety and that they're also protecting the privacy of their consumers and buyers. And so we've seen this, this trend, I think, start to just kind of be planted this year. And I expect a lot of growth there. If I was going to pick one company to watch, it would probably be InfoSum. I know them pretty well and their background and their story. And I really love how they're really thinking about just being, in essence, the connector of data and allowing that privacy first focus. And brand safety focus, for publishers or advertising, DSPs and platforms, and connecting everyone together in a safe way. So I expect that we'll see, more and more happening there as privacy and, just consumer first approaches continue to be front of mind.
All right, I think that's pretty solid. And the promise of these kind of clean data rooms and this idea of matching the first party data, and the privacy pieces together, I think has been there for a while. I don't think we've seen it at scale yet, but I'm excited. I think it's a natural sort of evolution that we need to get to. So I like that one. Yeah, for me, the industry that I think we're going to see some more change in is the restaurant industry. And I'm not going to call out any one particular company other than to say where I think the disruption needs to happen is in the sort of the order delivery space. So the Uber Eats, skip the dishes up here, DoorDash, that whole space, because what we've heard time and time again is these small businesses, these local restaurants, not only are they having a tough time in the pandemic and just trying to get customers and revenue, is what little they're getting in terms of delivery and orders. The margin is just getting eaten up by these delivery companies. The Toronto City of Toronto government here just had to pass a law to cap fees on all these delivery services because they were like taking 30% margins on delivery. Like, it's ridiculous, right? And so what I think there's an opportunity for is new competitors to emerge in the market, smaller local competitors to emerge in the market that will get some traction. And there's a number of them up here that are already doing that, and I'm sure you've got them in Atlanta and across the globe. This is a trend that's happening. But to take that one step further, there's only so far you can go with a small local competitor from a scale point of view, right? Before somebody comes in and takes you out or what have you. So I want to wind the clock back. You'll remember the days of when in the retail world, there was this platform called Currency, and then Walmart, along with a bunch of other retailers, tried to team up to create something called the MCX, the Merchant Payment Exchange Networks. And it was all about them saying, hey, the credit card companies are charging us too much. We need to take control of this, reduce the fees, and basically control our own payment processing network. It didn't go anywhere. Ultimately, it failed. But think about that now, the concept of that applied to the restaurant industry. apply to not franchises and big chain restaurants. I'm talking about local businesses, local restaurants, essentially somehow creating, sort of this consortium play around, delivery and fees. And I think there could be an interesting opportunity there for somebody to really emerge and start to kind of roll up a bunch of local services. So almost let the local players play, but be part of a bigger network and a fee structure system. I don't know, but I think there's something there. So that's kind of where my head's at in terms of where there's some innovation to come.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'd love to see more innovation around that, and certainly more opportunities for, this year has been like we have seen the rich have gotten richer due to this pandemic, and it would be great to see sort of these more wholesome underdogs really, thrive and kind of turn the tables a little bit this next year. So I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah. So that's it. That's our show. That's kind of our thoughts on last year and the year ahead. You've been listening to episode number 497 of Location Weekly. Hopefully, there's something in there that piqued your interest. As always, if you have story ideas, we'll be back to our regular programming with another episode next week. But reach out to us with story ideas, feedback, thoughts. Companies that we, should be aware of, what have you. And we just thank you for listening and watching and supporting this year. And we wish you a fantastic new year and safety and health for all. Be well.
And we'll see you in 2021.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.